So, well, you asked for it and I will deliver. Also, because I want to talk about it myself. So, we're going to talk about how, according to a Reuters poll, India is actually the worst country for women, ahead of Pakistan, ahead of Afghanistan, ahead of Saudi Arabia, and yes, ahead of even bloody Iraq and Syria. How does that happen? Let's talk about it. My name is Sham Sharma. Welcome to the Sham Sharma Show. Hello, and welcome. Welcome to another edition of the Sham Sharma Show. Thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you. Alright, so recently, people like Rahul Gandhi and people like the usual suspects and the leftists just couldn't contain their happiness and their glee at the fact that there was a Reuters report and a Reuters poll that came out, which said that India was the worst country in the world for women. It was at the number one spot. So Rahul Gandhi obviously immediately, without checking it, without looking at the methodology, without looking at why or how this came to be, just immediately shared the link. And the link said, India leads Afghanistan, Syria, and Saudi Arabia in rape and violence against women. So again, you can kind of understand why they're sharing it, because hurting India's image politically helps them. But let's take a look at the actual report and how this whole poll was conducted. So the report and the poll says that the Thomas Reuters Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Thomas Reuters, the world's largest news and information provider, conducted a global perception poll of experts in women's issues to highlight the most dangerous countries for women. We contacted 548 experts focused on women's issues, including aid and development professionals, academics, health workers, policymakers, non-government organization workers, journalists, and social commentators. So essentially what all this mumbo jumbo means is that the whole claim of India being the worst country in the world for women is not based on any data, is not based on any facts. It is based on the perception. Yes, the perception of a small number of women. And also, it is very possible that these small number of women that were picked were often talking about countries that they have heard about or they have read about, but they haven't necessarily visited or lived in. And so with the case of India, it could well be the case that the people are talking about the country without having necessarily visited or lived in the country. Which is again very interesting, because there are countries in the world where women can't even leave the house without the male's permission. There are countries like Syria and Iraq where recently hundreds upon hundreds of women who have been captured and sold as sex slaves for men to do with them as they wish. Those countries are below India. We have Saudi Arabia, where women cannot be outside of the house without being covered, where women only just a few months ago were given permission to drive. You have Pakistan, where minority women, Sikh and Hindu women, are kidnapped from their homes. Young teenage girls are kidnapped from their homes, and they are forcibly converted to Islam, and they're married off to older Muslim men. That country is lower than India.
What is this? What is this? For what? Why?
A 2016 survey done by the UN Children's Fund showed that 87% of the women in Egypt have undergone genital mutilation. That country is lower than India. Look, I'm not saying that there are not problems, okay? I'm not saying that India is this weird special paradise where women don't face any problems at all. I'm not saying that at all. Let's just be very clear about that. There are problems, and there are serious problems with how women are treated in India, with how women are viewed in India. Any person here watching this that is saying that they'll be perfectly happy with letting their daughters or their sisters roam around anywhere in India at any time of the day is completely lying. So I understand that there are problems. Okay, but to say that India is the worst country in the world for women is an outright lie. Either you just don't understand India, or you've never been to India, or you've never seen India, or you're just straight up lying. Women are increasingly involved and in very important positions in business, in academia, in politics, in all of these industries and all of these sectors. These are the women that are responsible for the successful Indian Mars mission. These two women over here hold two very prestigious portfolios in the Indian government. We've passed major laws against child marriage. We've passed major laws against dowry. We've passed major laws against female infanticide. Finding out the sex of the baby so you can abort a female child is completely illegal in India. And recently as well, we brought forward a major bill which is going to end the evil practice of triple talaq in Muslim societies as well, which is going to better the lives of thousands upon thousands of Muslim women. So India is taking big strides and has already taken big strides in improving the well-being and improving the lives and the quality of life of Indian women. And also it is important to remember that according to this poll that was conducted, the paragon of freedom, the most free society on the planet, so to say, the United States is in third position in terms of violence against women and the most dangerous place for women. And looking at statistics, okay, let's just look at statistics. So with every 100,000 inhabitants or 1 lakh inhabitants, the USA has 38.6 reported rapes. For every 100,000 inhabitants, Sweden with 63.5. Australia is in the top 10 as well. India is nowhere even close to the top 50. India has 6.3. And then again, you can understand that there is a certain amount of rapes that don't go reported, that go unreported, and I understand that. And even allowing for that, let's say it goes up to 10, let's say it goes up to even 15. Even then, India is not anywhere close to the top 10, top 20. Also, let's even look at the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime report, according to which statistics, which is only data till 2015, by the way, and according to their data also, India is nowhere among the top countries when it comes to sexual violence related crimes. So now let's talk about this perception. Who fuels the perception? Who creates the perception? Again, looking at the facts, looking at the hard statistics, India is obviously nowhere close to being the top offender. There are many, 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 many more countries that are way worse than India in that regard. So again, it's the same old nexus of the evangelists, of the Islamists, and of the leftists. So again, we already know that India is one of the biggest targets for all of these missionary groups, like Joshua Project, for example. It's because most Islamic countries severely limit the amount of missionary work that missionary organizations can do in those countries. China does the same thing. So then India becomes the obvious target for conversion, because India allows these people to come and work and convert and proselytize in India. And then you have the seculars and the so-called leftists that every time an event happens, they don't even wait for the information. Immediately, they will hit social media, they will get on the streets, and they will start saying how horrible of a country India is and how horrible India's culture is. And India is just the worst place in the world when it comes to women. And that fuels the perception. Let's look at Sweden and Australia, for example. So Sweden and Australia are both in the top 10 when it comes to rapes and sexual violence against women. But when something like that happens, the reason Sweden and Australia are not in the top when it comes to perception is because Swedish people and Australian people don't get on the streets as soon as there is a rape and start saying that, oh, Sweden is the problem. Swedish society is the worst. Australian society is the worst. All Australian men are horrible. All Swedish men are horrible. That's not what they do, because they understand that this is a problem, but that does not mean that the entire Swedish society, that the entire Swedish male population is just horrible, and that the Swedish patriarchy and the Australian patriarchy is just horrible and it needs to die. But for the Indian leftists, it's a matter of pride. They take pride in the fact that India is seen as a horrible society, that Indian men are seen as horrible people. They revel in it. Like the Kathua case recently that happened was a great example. They didn't even wait for all the information to come out. They saw that there were massive holes in the charge sheet, but they still started these hashtags on social media that they're ashamed to be Indians, that India is a horrible society. You saw all those pictures of the celebrities and all these influential leftists with their placards. They have this deep dislike for India and its culture. Who can forget that infamous Akash Banerjee? Akash Banerjee is someone who's now becoming famous on YouTube as being a sane voice and as being a balanced voice. But who can forget the campaign that him and Radio Mirchi took out when they were saying Mat Aao India? They launched this campaign saying, don't come to India. And they produced an ad and stuff like that as well. Do you think Sweden's going to do that? Do you think Australia is going to do that? Saying that don't come to Sweden, don't come to Australia because we're a horrible country. We're a horrible place for women. So please don't come and visit our countries. No, of course not. In order to shame Hindus, people are happy to shame India. And this creates a vicious cycle. Something bad that happens against women in India, I'm not trying to put it lightly. It is a horrible thing. We should address it. But the moment something happens, these leftists and these evangelists, they will jump on social media, they will jump on the streets and they will say, India is a horrible place, don't come to India, India is a horrible country for women. So that perception travels overseas, and then the Washington Post and the New York Times picks it up, and then people in overseas countries reading these outlets, reading these social media posts coming out of India, they will read it, and then that perception goes into their heads. And then these people will be polled by Reuters, and then they will obviously say, well, this is what we read about India, so then it must be true. So then that poll gets published, and then these leftists and these seculars and these evangelists then pick up those Reuters polls, fuel the perception again that India is a horrible country, and that vicious circle just keeps on rolling, just keeps on churning. This is how the propaganda works. And this is why it is so important for us to fight back against this propaganda. We have to make sure that our voices are heard. We have to make sure that all influential people, again, I'm not a very influential person, but I'm just saying people that are, all influential people on social media and in the public sphere need to vehemently criticize this report and discredit this report and reveal this report for what it is. I would love to hear your opinion on what you think about this whole poll and how we can fight back against this kind of propaganda and this vicious circle that I talked about. Please let me know your comments in the comments section below, because I'd love to hear them. Again, guys, thank you very much for watching today's episode. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to give this episode a thumbs up. Please make sure to leave a like. It helps me out. It helps the channel out. Also, you can make sure to subscribe to the show's channel down below or over here. I will see you for the next episode. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you soon.